When it comes to insects and various little creatures, they can make really good drawing exercises because of how complex they are visually. In many ways, looking to the smaller parts of nature, specifically insects, we get the opportunity to explore variation in terms of visual qualities, and then ultimately how that can be used not only to enhance our drawing techniques, shading styles, and so on, but also how those can be very versatile features that we can use as additions to our own artworks. With that being said, in today's video we will be learning how to draw a scorpion. So hey guys, my name is Matt. Welcome to another video by artincontext.org, where we explore various art related topics, and in today's video we will be learning how to draw a scorpion, specifically with some colored pencils, some pencil, and some ballpoint pen. So with that being said, let's get into it. Now, something to think about is obviously your medium of choice when you are exploring various art topics, and in the case of drawing insects, what works really well is this combination of colored pencils, graphite pencil, and pen. Now, the reason is because graphite pencil and pen work really well together to get these finer details, but then ultimately working with colored pencil, we get the opportunity to integrate color, obviously, but then ultimately how to blend colors to achieve certain tonal values. So the way in which we're going to start is we're going to start by shaping the scorpion. So to create a realistic drawing of a scorpion, we want to begin with shaping the scorpion first. So using our HB pencils, we want to sketch out the general form of the scorpion with some light line work. So we will be drawing the scorpion from a left side view, which means only one side will be predominantly visible. We want to start adding in the set of legs already at this point with our scorpion drawing. And the idea is we want to do this simultaneously while drawing the mesosoma of the scorpion. Now, a good idea as we go through this tutorial is to kind of look at a reference image or a diagrammatical drawing of a scorpion. This way you get to kind of understand the various features and how they fit together as you proceed through your drawing process. Now, a scorpion has 8 legs that are roughly the same size except for the back legs, which are slightly larger for stability. So these legs will connect to the mesosoma of the scorpion, which has 7 segments. So the mesosoma is kind of that larger section of the scorpion, but we'll see that it is segmented. Now again, there's various scorpions to draw as well. In this case, we are drawing a desert scorpion, so that's something to bear in mind. Now, naturally, as we kind of draw in these legs that connect to the mesosoma of the scorpion, we want to exclude the prosoma or the head area. So we want to be conscious of the angle of the scorpion drawing as well. We want to place the 7 segments of the mesosoma or the back of the scorpion in a row that falls on a horizontal plane. So we do want to think about that structure kind of sitting flat on the scorpion's back. Now, this means that they will be like plates that are viewed from a side angle, which makes them distorted and slightly slimmer than that if they were seen from an aerial view or a top view. The pedipalps of the scorpion will come around the face, extending beyond the prosoma of the scorpion. So take your time on the sketch, especially on the pedipalps and how they are placed in front of the scorpion's prosoma. You want to make sure that the pedipalps have 4 segments as well. This is really important, including the pincers at the end. Now, once we have kind of established this very light general sketch with our pencils, we can already start to move into refining our scorpion sketch. So we will proceed with our pencils and erasers, slowly tweaking and adding to the drawing, working in some details and then contextualizing features to give the insect a more distinct visual quality in terms of making it actually identifiable as a scorpion. We want to make sure that all the legs are placed alongside the mesosoma correctly. And then we also want to make sure that each of the features that are segmented have the correct number of segments. So this is why looking at a diagrammatical drawing is a really good way to kind of assist you in your drawing process. Now, once we have basically established this general sketch, we can already start to add in some color. So the idea is that we want to build up these color bases before we start refining the details with some pen marks. And this way we kind of have this base layer of color. In the case of this particular scorpion species, we're going to work with a very simple array of colors. So we're going to work with a variation of browns. And the idea is that starting from the front of the scorpion, we want to give it a light coloring with a light brown pencil. And we're going to slowly work our way through the entire scorpion drawing. So try to work with a variation or a couple different brown pencils. Going through the entire scorpion, let us proceed to give it a light coloring throughout the whole body with our lightest brown pencil. We'll want to color in every segment of the scorpion to see the undertone of the scorpion's color scheme. So using a dark brown pencil or a darker brown pencil, keeping it to a mid-tone kind of quality, we want to proceed now to color in the side of the scorpion's mesosoma area where the legs connect. Again, when you look at various species of scorpions, you'll see that naturally the coloration will change slightly due to light and shadow, and this is something we already want to be conscious of in terms of establishing these color variations and tonal variations with our brown pencils. Now the idea is to definitely take your time. You can also establish these gradients in the various features, and this way you can kind of define again these moments of shadow and light and how they transition just based on how the scorpion is kind of positioned towards the light source and how that naturally is going to affect the shadowing and the areas that are more illuminated. So naturally the light source tends to come from a higher angle, so this would kind of establish these darker qualities that start to form beneath the scorpion, and this is just a really good way to again further emphasize the three-dimensional quality of your scorpion drawing, which ultimately gives it a more realistic quality. Now take your time integrating these color variations, working with a few brown pencils. Again, look at some references of an actual scorpion, but the idea is that you want to create these little gradients in various parts of your scorpion drawing to ultimately create this quality of light and shadow, which is what gives structures and objects a three-dimensional quality, the way they interact with light and shadow. Now basically take your time working in those color variations, establishing that base of color, and then what we're going to do is we're going to move on to adding in some shading with our ballpoint pen. Now working with ballpoint pen is really good because ballpoint pen's ink tends to come out quite sparingly and then kind of gives us the same drawing approach or effect as that of a pencil. So the idea is that the ink comes out quite sparingly, we have a lot of agency over our mark making process, and that way we can kind of approach the drawing process the same as we would with a pencil. So now that we have established an undertone color palette, we now want to work with our pens to add more contrast and distinct detailing to the scorpion drawing. So starting from the side of the scorpion, we want to darken the edges of the pedipalps as well as the outline of the arms and add some line work to the drawing. Now this is where we start to really use our pens to define qualities, add some stippling marks, add some pen shading, and ultimately enhance the overall three-dimensional quality and features of our scorpion drawing. Do make sure you take your time when using a pen for shading and detailing in your scorpion drawing. We'll want to make sure that we use our pens to bring out different features of the scorpion by outlining and adding line work and so on. So using the color palette to guide us, we want to shade in the scorpion accordingly. This means that the color palette should be indicative of where the lightest and darkest areas of our scorpion drawing will be, and that way we can kind of have a more informative way of adding some pen shading and detailing to our scorpion drawing. Now something to consider as we shade around the prosoma, we will come to the front legs of the scorpion. Again, we want to use the pen as a tool to add in darker shadows and line work to create these distinct features within the scorpion drawing. Now the idea is that we're going to focus on shading the middle features of the scorpion in pen for now, so we will now start to work our way through the midsection of the scorpion, which is where the mesosoma feature and the legs are situated. So we want to create a shadow gradient in each segment of the mesosoma with our pens. Again, the mesosoma are kind of like these flat plates, so as we create these gradients in each segment, we start to emphasize the actual three-dimensional quality and the overlapping quality of those various segments as they sit on top of the scorpion. This means that each segment in the mesosoma should have a dark section that fades to a lighter section. By doing this in each mesosoma segment, we will find that it creates three-dimensionality within our scorpion's exoskeleton. And the same goes for each leg of the scorpion. Each leg of the scorpion has different segments, which we want to emphasize by using our pens to create shadows and distinct lines. As we go through the different features of the scorpion, we will want to make sure we are capturing those qualities using our pen marks. So take your time when shading with a pen. A good rule of thumb is to approach it as as you would with a pencil. Remember to be conscious of the pressure you apply to your pen, especially when you want to create these gradients for three-dimensional qualities in these various segments. Now, as you proceed to add shading to the midsection, make sure to create a gradient within each segment of the mesosoma. That's really important for that specific feature. Again, by doing so, we will define the exoskeleton of the scorpion more distinctly. We do this by shading darker at the start of each segment and then allowing a slight gradient to shift to a lighter quality as we kind of move our way through each segment. You must go through each leg as well, making sure that you are adding pen marks to each. We don't want to add too many pen marks to the legs, however. This way we keep the color visible. So the idea is that we're not also trying to overpower those very subtle colored palettes or those color qualities. Again, you can also work with your color pencil at this stage if you feel like it needs some more coloration, but the idea is to kind of use our pen marks and pen shading and detailing to emphasize these qualities without overpowering the colored features. We want to slowly work our way through each section of the scorpion drawing, making sure we spend time on the segments within the mesosoma, and the same goes for the legs because of how they are also segmented and they are kind of smaller. We also want to make sure we're spending time on those sections as well as the side structure of the scorpion that connects to the mesosoma or where the legs sprout from. So making sure that when you're thinking about segmentations within the exoskeleton, you are defining them with your pen. You are thinking about how to integrate shading to create these qualities of three-dimensionality in the exoskeleton, and ultimately enhancing the scorpion drawing slowly by integrating some pen detailing and marks. Now, as we continue with this pen shading process, we're going to move towards the back features of the scorpion. So as we come to the last segment of the mesosoma area, we want to make sure that we have added shading to each segment throughout the entire mesosoma area. This means that we should have a small gradient within each segment that fades from dark to light. So we also want to make sure that the legs have been modified with some pen marks. Again, we don't want to oversaturate the legs with dark pen marks, but simply complement them with our pen detailing. So this means we want to outline them, we want to add in some slight shading, but never like completely darken them to the point where we're overpowering the subtle colored palette. As we transition into each segment of the tail or the metasoma, we want to make sure that we add in some pen lines within each segment. So we want to use pen marks to create sections like a hexagonal shape in each segment. Again, looking at a diagrammatical drawing of a scorpion will give you some better insight into the actual structural quality of those various segments within the metasoma or the tail of the scorpion. By adding in line work that creates little sections within the metasoma, we get to see how it actually defines the exoskeletal quality of that hexagonal shape in those various segments throughout the entire tail structure. Now, you do want to make sure you're taking your time, again, thinking through the actual hexagonal shape of each of these segments and how they look and how to define them with some line work is really essential. So by adding in line work that creates little sections within each segment of the metasoma, it gives the tail more dimension, and again just emphasizes that exoskeleton. The lines can also be dotted lines in certain areas to give a spiky quality to the tail. So you'll notice with desert scorpions, the segmentation in that hexagonal kind of way is defined by these little spiky ridges. So you can use little dots of lines to kind of create that quality. We also want to make sure that we work our way through the entire metasoma, also adding in darker marks to each connection point between the tails, different segments. So by adding in some shading and line work between the various segments, we're giving that three-dimensional quality to each segment. And as you come to the talson, which is kind of the last part of the tail where the stinger is, or the actual pointed edge of the scorpion's tail, we can proceed to shade it in slightly darker, just as we did for the pincers or the pedipalps. We'll find that all these pointed edges tend to be slightly darker, so that's another way to kind of give our scorpion a more realistic quality in terms of how it's representing the actual desert scorpion features. So with any little horn structure, we'll find that they should be slightly darker, making sure that they are seamlessly also blending into the lighter sections of the scorpion. Make sure you go through your entire scorpion drawing and add in pen marks to give the scorpion more detail, but also remember to take a break with a drawing process that seems quite complex and detailed. That way you come back more refreshed and you can engage with the drawing process with a kind of refresh mindset. And then lastly, we want to draw a shadow underneath our scorpion, and this is just another way to further contextualize the three-dimensional nature of our scorpion, giving it a sense of grounding in a space as opposed to just floating in a void. We want to make sure that we keep the shadow on a horizontal plane, which means the shadow will distort and be thinner than the actual scorpion, but we do want to make sure that the shadow connects to every point of the scorpion that makes contact with the ground. And once you have drawn the shadow with your pencil, go over the shadow with your pen, making the darkest parts of the shadow directly under the scorpion, again emphasizing that idea that the light source is coming from the top section or above the scorpion, and ultimately blending in that pen detailing or shading into your pencil. But otherwise, guys, that is it. This is how you draw a realistic scorpion. Very brief, very simple. Some key things to take away is you always want to build up structures that are complex through this kind of refining process of layers. So the idea is to start simple and then refine. So you start with the general sketch, the general shapes, you refine them into their more realistic features. You then start to integrate some pencil shading rather, and then some detailing, which you can then go over with some color. Again, really paying attention to the concept of light and how that kind of changes the color values and tonal values within our scorpion, and then ultimately integrating some darker shading with a darker medium, where you can maybe consider working with a pen or some darker pencils. But guys, this is the way in which you can draw a scorpion through a set of very specific tools. Again, this process though can be applied to various mediums. This is just one way of demonstrating how to draw this very unique insect. But otherwise, that is it from me today. If you did like this video, please let us know in the comment section below if you would like us to explore other related topics or similar kinds of topics, maybe insects or birds or other animals. We really love to do these kinds of videos. If you did like the video, please drop a like. Please do subscribe. That helps us to grow the channel, which ultimately grows our channel and enables us to make more art related content for you guys. But thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, see you then. Cheers.